employees out, don't probably want to get out. So I think that's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
All right, thanks, Suzanne.
Thanks. I know you can go back to work. And I'll just be back here. Go back to work. So Jan, next you
All
want
right.
to do riffs?
The last one is risk management. This is page 325. If you notice in the PowerPoint, risk management is kind of like insurance, at least its budget is, that you kind of don't realize it's there or it's not really part of everything until you read it.
Yeah.
Like insurance.
A little section at a time.
You can let me know when you're ready.
Wait,
So risk management has 3 positions. It's myself, Alicia, and we absorbed Ben Welsh, community events and whatnot. He used to have his own budget unit, but now he's in risk management. Some of the highlights that are in here, if you look under 4160 allowances, one thing that we rolled out a few years ago was a safety incentive for staff meeting their safety hours. And it's been really successful. We used to utilize some of the rebates we get from our insurance company. They've changed the way that they're doing their insurance coverage. And so we no longer are getting that rate, but we talked as a group and decided that this is a really good program to keep going. And with your support, we'll keep doing that for staff if they meet their required hours. The other thing that I wanted to highlight is you mentioned uniforms earlier, Councilor Piano, and out of risk management budget, we pay for safety boots for staff, and we're actually going to go up on our safety boot allowance because the cost of boots has gone up, and a lot of staff members, when I go out in the field, say it's just not enough to cover the cost of a boot. And so we're going to go up from 120 to 150 on that to allow staff a little bit more for those safety boots. Overall, you've heard many people mention that their budgets are flat and that sort of thing. I can actually tell you my budget has gone down significantly. The way that risk management budget is funded is it's based on revenues from the different accounts. So we have, water, wastewater, electric, general fund, all support risk management operations. Our insurance company has had, which is the New Mexico Self-Insurers Fund, has had a lot of changes the past couple of years here. And so you'll see, go back to 2 years ago, actual expenditures was $2.8 million. And then if you look at last year, what they did is they gave us major rebates because they were trying to figure out how they were going to insure cities across the state, and they changed their methodology. And if you've attended any of the lead conferences, maybe they've mentioned that, how they've changed some of that. And so they gave us basically a huge discount on our rates for the year. And so you see last year's actual drop significantly, right? So not knowing how it's all going to shake out, I did cut my budget down to where I think it will be comfortable. They changed our methodology on our workers' comp. So now we're being more of a traditional model, whereas before we were kind of a self-insured retention fund where we were paying into a large fund. And I think that's why they, at the New Mexico Self-Insurers Fund, they realized they were accumulating a lot of cash and gave that back to its members these past couple of years. So other than that, my budget is down significantly, and I hope to drop it more next year, depending on what the insurance company does. But if they continue to move in the direction they are, I anticipate this going down even further next year. One of the things that I do have is a reserve fund, a risk management reserve. When I started with the organization, we had about $4.5 million in that fund. That was way overfunded for what we needed. And so there were lots of items, and I'm sure those of you that have been on council for a while remember quite a few expenditures coming out of the risk management budget. And now we are going to maintain just $2 million in the reserve fund. We're hoping that's going to be enough. There were changes in the last legislative session under House Bill 6, which is changes to the Tort Claim Act, basically increasing the limits or the liability then will fall upon the organization. So the city will be responsible for any civil liabilities that come and go beyond the Tort Claim Act thresholds. And, you know, there's no case law yet behind that, but we'll soon know if $2 million will be enough to handle those civil rights cases. That's all I got. Any questions?
So any lawsuits come out of this?
Correct.
So are there any current lawsuits happening now?
Yes.
How many?
Cool. I would have to get back with you on that.
That many, huh?
Yeah. Well, it depends. I mean, so there's lawsuits that are actually filed by a lawyer, and then there's the tort claim, which are more of just like if we damage property, right?
Oh.
And then, so some that are civil related, Curtis would probably.
I'd say pending, typically we have about a half dozen, 6 to 8 pending right now.
And I'd say about,
Every year we have to do a report to the auditor on what our pending litigation. I think it's that 6 to 3.
Do you remember the letter? Because we have that.
I don't.
it's, yeah, like you said, 8, it's been up around 10 at some point.
I can probably pull it up here.
But yes, the expenditures are coming out of my budget.
Okay. And then this on 325, the last item, line item, well, it's under capital projects, I guess, and then it says 16,318,000, and then last year's actuals was 25 million. Is that right? You know that right?
We'd have to defer to Patty on that one. So
The last-
bottom numbers, Patty.
Oh, the very, very bottom numbers,
Yeah.
that's the entire city as a whole.
Oh, okay.
So if you look to the bottom right number,
Yeah.
we will be using, if everything here is approved and everything here happened as projected, we would be using $16 million of cash for the year because that's a positive number.
But that's for the whole entire budget, not for just risk
That's everything.
management.
If you go up one line to
Yeah,
where you're
yes.
exactly even with risk management with the 4 asterisks and that far right number is a
Huh.
0,
Right.
that's because we make sure he's funded to break exactly even to maintain his $2 million in reserves. We on a monthly basis, it goes up and down because nothing happens exactly equitable month to month. But for the year, he will start at 2 million and he will end at 2 million.
Okay.
And the any surprise civil rights.
Any other questions?
John, the electric.
There seems to be a lot of uniforms in all of the budgets. I didn't know so many uniforms for.
So for all staff, we get a city shirt once a year that's just a polo with the city logo on it.
Oh, okay.
But then some of the staff are required to have fire resistant materials, or they're required to have like heavy gear with like boots, PPE, and we make sure we cover that in the appropriate location.
At one time you were letting council get shirts with their names on it.
We did, I know we did that, or I believe we did that when we did the flag shirts, because we were the patriotic city. I don't know that we've done it since, but at your request, we could certainly provide those on our annual purchases.
Yeah, because we bought.
Do your
our own,
budget, we can
We
talk
bought our own ones that were pink for the.
Yeah,
breast cancer
all
ones.
staff during that thing, all staff that wanted to buy the pink shirts, they
Yeah.
did that on their own. It wasn't a city purchase.
Yeah. Well, look, we better come up with some, better come up with some now.
John, what page are we starting on? What page number are we gonna start on?
297.
Way back there. I know I'm up to trying to do it.
507, 60, then, would you like to start out with how many staff you have? This is a quiz.
we're allowed 39.
How many vacancies?
Oh, wow.
You know that.
I think there are 3 vacancies.
Yeah, but
Well, as of the printing of this, none of them were vacant at the moment. But that changes daily.
Good job. Some
Oh,
people-
no, there are a couple
no,
here. I
there's
see,
vacancies.
I see a couple.
we had a position.
Yeah.
All right, you want to go? Want to go ahead?
And hit the highlights of your budget, including customer care.
I guess I can start by saying that, in particular, I don't disagree with budget that's been presented to you. However, there are some power cost revenue items that are still somewhat fluid at the moment, and maybe subject to change. We are in agreement with Ms. Husick. We kind of settled on a 1.89% rate increase. That would be our power cost increase from Continental Divide. That would provide the electric department with an additional $493,600 in revenue and bring our revenue to $24,643,600. That would increase the franchise tax and shared services $38,556. So as far as that goes, our cost, like I said, is somewhat fluid because of negotiations that are going on currently with Continental Divide and the Western Administration. We're going to have to buy a lot more power from Continental Divide, primarily because of the fact that our contract rated delivery from the Western Area Power Administration has been reduced to 56% of what we used to get. So, you know, when that reduction comes, then we buy that from Continental Divide. Also, we're going to end up buying more power because of poor performance of the solar. They should be in a bright, sunny world. They should be producing about 20 million kilowatt hours a year, and they're just based a little bit over 14 million. Is what they're producing, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that you have cloudy days, and then you have a lot of smoke from wildfires that reduces the irradiation, so they can't produce as much power as they plant. Plus, we've had some mechanical issues with the solar farm, and so we probably could not enforce the guarantee that's in the contract. So once we get all of our SCADA up and running, which is going to be the end of this week, starting July 1st, if the irradiation comes in at 90% for fiscal year 23, then we should get about 20 million kilowatt hours from that. That's a crapshoot.
What are we paying per? What are we
Paying per kilowatt hour for the solar,
We're paying solar, we're paying 4.75 cents.
That's a pretty good deal if they gave us what they
Yeah,
promised.
deal.
And then the contract for Continental Divide for July 1, what is their cost?
5.4 cents.
You see the difference.
How much more, John, are we gonna have to purchase from Continental Divide? 'Cause I know we have the new contract, but that's not for a couple more years that we get away from Continental Divide, right? So how much, you said we have to buy more power from Continental Divide? What estimated how much more?
The budget right now, is set at 11,264,000 in total for Continental Divide, WAPA, and the solar farm. And I think it needs to go to 12,121,000.
Did you want to elaborate on that? Why we're probably going to have to adjust the budget? Because why?
We're buying more power
From Continental Divide at a higher price.
at 5.3 cents. Now,
How much does that, sorry, Jen, how much more power does that, I just don't know, how much power does that extra million or that you estimated buy us?
yeah.
Sorry, I just thought you knew off the top of your head. Okay, that's fine.
So do you want to change the purchases for resale? Is that what you said?
Pardon?
Is that what you said?
You need to change that. She's asking if you're going to need to change the number for purchases for resale, for power purchase
Yeah.
to 12. What?
$12,121,000. Like I say, so much of this is fluid.
Sure, I understand.
You know, depending on the outcome of the new well contract. We end up selling that right today. That power is on the market for $35 a megawatt hour.
Mhm.
Next month, it's $160 a megawatt hour. So if we're selling it, that's the difference that just makes everything go crazy.
So that's probably another presentation
Yeah.
when we're in negotiations with,
Once the negotiation
Right.
with Guzman gets done, then, that's another presentation.
John, where's the power purchase line item? What line item is that? Or Patty, what's the line item? 4710, thank you.
yeah, it's called purchases for resale, but
And what's under miscellaneous? So miscellaneous charges, it looks like you have is that right? A surplus of 150,000? Your miscellaneous on page 298.
It's on revenues.
Sorry, am I on the wrong page? 340-2308 miscellaneous charges, 150,000.
That'd be like upgrading services.
I could look up some specifics.
Yes, it's the same amount. Why it's called miscellaneous charge.
Those are coming through.
Jackie, do you know?
I can,
I can find that out for you.
Okay.
so those are, if you look at that one, it's a contra revenue. See how it's a positive number, not a negative number?
Right.
Those are primarily credit card fees and bank fees to that enterprise.
So it's a surplus, right?
No, it's actually, it's contra revenue. It's a backwards account. We run it through as a revenue type item because it's directly related to collecting those revenues because it comes through from the mostly credit cards. And, but it's actually a reduction in his revenue. But he's paying about 150,000 a year for those services.
I agree. But there's a possibility that could go either way. It could be a contract in revenue or it could be an operating.
But right, but we record it as a contra revenue, is how we
A
report. it to
contra
you.
revenue?
Mhm.
What, I don't know what that is, I'm sorry.
It's just,
revenue.
yeah, it's.
Oh, okay. Oh,
An
okay.
account that works backwards to what the typical operation would be.
Okay. Interesting. I've never heard of that before. Okay.
But it's money we basically don't get, like when you charge $100 credit card at the store, well, the store's only going to get $98 of it. So we report the full $100 in his electric revenue, and then we take the $2 out here essentially.
Oh.
So that they net to $98 in revenue is what he received. And that's why we
Oh.
put these particular charges there, because it's basically off the top. And it nets it out so that it reflects
I
the
see.
actual revenue essentially.
I see, okay, interesting.
Marianne, he won't hit his 180 days cash. He's gonna be below 180 days.
Any other questions?
You guys have any other money through bonds or notes that are specific to the enterprise, or is that like in water enterprise and electric, do they utilize funds from that or no?
Yeah, there's one loan currently outstanding for the electric enterprise for streetlights.
Energy performance bond
Mhm.
that we did to pay for basically streetlights throughout the city, LED streetlights throughout the city.
But the-
But in theory, the savings covers the debt service.
You started with a rate increase of 1.89. What do you mean the rate increase? Is that to the consumer or?
That would be to every account we have, every rate class would be an increase of 1.89%. And that's to cover our increased cost from Continental Light.
But not CPI.
Right.
CPI this year is
8.5 right now.
off the charts. I mean, typically it's been 2.5, 3, and so he's basically saying we're not going to. He's going to actually have to go to council and get off position, and then.
So the rate increase actually doesn't keep up with the expenses that it's costing us.
I think we've been able to cover all that with cash on hand. Cover any increases in, materials and labor and stuff like that. And we can cover that with what cash we have.
With the new figures he just gave us and updating the calculations, he'll be under the 180 days by 2.7 million. And so our projection, our official projection, unless we get all that, your other items settled before we present this in a couple weeks, is going to be that we'll be below 180 days cash on hand with only the 1.89%.
And
And that, so to do that, we would just make it clear that you understand and you're proving that we'll be below the cash policy.
But the settlement with Continental Divide, the negotiations relating to the WAPA and the payments from Guzman contract. I mean, we have to put all that together. To see where we are.
Well, they would need to come up to about 2.7 million additional cash to make it flush at 180 days
At the end of this year or?
at the end of 23.
We're having a rate with,
Water rates said what?
water rates.
That's water.
I mean, aren't we having a workshop about we did electric?
We had one and now things are continuing to be fluid. That's the word you
Oh, okay.
used. So
I thought we had
we'll
it
have to
coming
come
up.
back to council separately on that. And I don't, we're looking.
I had it on the
I think
26th, no?
What we need is JM and you, Ms. Juicy, and Patty and Jackie and I sit down and hammer out this days cash on hand. I respectfully disagree with Patty how she calculates that. But
Jackie did it utilizing your model and came up to match exactly what I'm showing. We did it completely independently of each other. And then we got together and we still have the same projection using two different.
But when do you think we're going to have when we know what our revenues are going to be based on the Guzman contract, the settlement with Continental Divide and the WAPA contract? And when is that all going to come together?
We'll probably have the Guzman contract hammered out before,
May 10th?
no,
No.
I don't think so. Probably be the last meeting in May. And then the Continental Divide thing, I should have the documents on that before 5 o'clock tomorrow, hopefully.
And what about the issue with WAPA and Continental Divide?
That's pretty much a done deal. That we can either pay Continental Divide $2,500 a month and keep that power here, or we can sell it on the open market. If we sell it on the open market, it gives us $43,000 in revenue.
Increases revenues. So as you can see, there's some issues hanging in terms of revenue that we have to resolve. So I think at this point, just looking at their expenditures and seeing if they're okay with that, and you have no questions, we'll get together and we'll come back. I was hoping to have this all together by the time that we did the water rate study, but it's not going to make it in time for that. So we're going to have to calculate the water rate study with our utility rates as projected. And then hopefully sometime by the end of May, we'll have this all together. It's interesting.
Marianne, two quick questions. Are we on the WAPA? Sorry, remind me, I know what the Guzman contract is on the WAPA of potentially selling electric. Remind me what WAPA is, and that's the potential if we can sell electric to the public?
Yeah. So WAPA used to be a minuscule percentage of our power. And maybe you can just mention what happened with the BOR and what they're doing and then what the complications are with staying away from the legal issues.
Part of the Bureau of Reclamation, to give you the whole spiel, the Bureau of Reclamation or the Corps of Engineers actually built all of the dams in the United States. On the Colorado River, the Bureau of Reclamation built them, and they are responsible for the operations and maintenance. They turn all of that responsibility over to the Western Area Power Administration, which does the billing and more or less does the bookkeeping for the Bureau of Reclamation. Like I said previously, we have a contract rate of delivery with the Western Area Power Administration and the Bureau of Reclamation. Right now, because of the drought, and if you see pictures of Lake Mead and Lake Powell, you can see if this drought continues for another 3 years, those dams could actually go to dead pool, which means they won't generate electricity. Then it's going to get expensive. But, so we've got that contract rate of delivery of 56% of what we were originally authorized to get. Now, with the Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project, the Bureau of Reclamation had actually set aside 26 megawatts of power to deliver the water to the electric power to use pumps and filtering systems to get that water to the Navajo Nation and to the city of Gallup. The city of Gallup portion of that is like 8 megawatts, if I remember. But because of the fact that they can't deliver the water that was promised in 2024, we're looking at probably 2029 to be able to actually get water out of the Navajo Gallup project. So in negotiation with the Bureau of Reclamation, we've said and I kind of came in at the later stages of it, who said, okay, provide us water, we're gonna have to use our wells to provide the water to our customers. So therefore, we think you should let us use some of that power that you've got allocated originally to go ahead and power the pump, water tanks, filtration system, whatever. So that's where we're at. Originally, they started out at 305 kW per month. And they told me that this was like 400 and some, 300 and some thousand kilowatt hour. So we talked that through, negotiated that, and we finally got it to where we're gonna get 2,000 kW of demand and 1,250,000 kilowatt hours per month of power for the well. Now with the Continental Divide contract, their contract says, no, you can only take the power that they're giving you from the original contract rate delivered. What we've come up with now is that we're going to take that power and sell it on the open market, which there are already contracts in place with WAPA that allow that. So we'll sell that to Guzman or Tri-State or somebody at market price, which our consultants are telling me that they estimate that the last 6 months of 2023, that will probably bring us over $600,000 revenue, over above what we paid for.
So that's what we're gonna explain.
Yeah.
That was way more information than I
But
was
there's a
expecting.
the other way around, not profit, but sell it less than what we were paying for it.
Yeah.
So Continental Divide won't let us take the cheap extra WAPA power. They're holding us to what we were originally allocated. So WAPA isn't going to allow us to actually take that power and sell it on the open market to make money to offset our
Awesome.
costs. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah,
But so-
that's the part.
That's
I was, John, that was a lot of detail.
Because council already approved the WAPA contract and they were all excited about the floor rate. We're gonna be able to pass that on to water and save the rates. And then Continental Divide said, no, you're gonna buy what we told you you're gonna buy per the contract. That's it. So that's the problem. So it's kind of fluid, but we're gonna sit down and try to figure all this out. So just look at the expenditures and we'll come back with revenues.
The nation
If,
can't even see.
On a totally different note, because that was a lot of electrical information that I probably will never know in the next 10 years of my life, but thank you for that detail. Bottom line's $600,000 extra, which is great. If you guys are under, or really, I guess any enterprise is under the 180 days cash on hand, can we utilize money from bonds or notes, treasury notes to supplement income if they like get below that and they need money, or how does that work?
So the policy we put in place says that we won't put any approved plan spending in place to bring us below the 180 days.
Okay.
Usually what we do, and this is where water and wastewater are going to be doing it, they have capital needs that definitely can't be met with ongoing cash on hand. So you do the bonding for that. It's not to supplement the revenues, but it's to take those expenditures and take them out of the picture essentially and fund them with another source of funding. And so that way their available cash stays there and only gets spent as approved, but we take that capital need and we fund it with the loan. Keep in mind though, that when we do that funding, there is going to be a debt service payment for 20 to 30 years to repay that amount. So it just takes it and spreads it out more evenly over an upcoming future period. And there's a lot of entities that do most of their capital based on just loans, and they do a bond cycling program to where they renew the loans every so often, and they draw down that amount, and that's how much they're going to plan for their capital. There's other ways we could do it to where we could say X dollars, percentage of your funds are always going to be for capital. And that way it kind of narrows down and reins it in. We don't currently embrace that method. We've been able to do it just based on what the needs of the department were when they did the request. So we'll have to look at it, and I don't know how you want to do the approval with a lot of moving factors. One thing I do have, you said 600,000 for 6 months, so that would ideally be 1.2 million in a year. But what about the cost of that piece? Then would we need to add that in for the WAPA power?
Yes, that's already in there.
It's already in this, but it's not up here. Okay, because that would still bring us a little short. That'd bring us about 1.4 million short of being there. So that's closer, and then we would have, yeah, we'd still be about $1 million short overall if everything comes through as he's just described. So we're close, but I think maybe we need to do a little more than 1.89, or we need to modify that policy for.
Well, we'll come back to you with this because there's just too many things in the air right now. Hopefully within a
Do
month.
the enterprises have access to treasury notes at all that we utilize in departments?
We do
What
for
are investments?
investing. Yeah. So what we do is our investing is all of our money is pooled cash, but we are required to track and report it for all of the 70 different funds that we have.
Okay,
And so if we buy treasury notes, or if we buy CDs, or if we buy money market, it's all based on policy it's driven by what the state allows, and then what our policy is that council's approved. Then we invest that money in a bucket, and then we'll allocate an amount among the funds that have available money to be invested. And then as needed, we move it from fund to fund so that each fund has the liquidity that they need. We've not ever had to liquidate anything based on a spending need, because we try to plan ahead and project that. And
so we've never cashed out any of our investments in terms of.
not in terms of needing cash. Now, some of them do get called, like if I own a bond, the city owns a bond, we have a call option at say 5 years. We can call it early and pay it off. You have no choice. You're liquidating it.
Okay.
Now, we have that occur, but we have never gone to the bank and said, you know what, sell something off.
Okay.
And we keep roughly $50 million in any given time in a variety of investments,
Okay.
maybe up to actually, we're up to about 60 million now.
It's an investment.
About half our money is complete liquid cash and half is invested.
We will have Patty come and do an update on our investment policy. That's
Okay.
what kind of on that. We're trying to get through the budget
Sorry,
process.
sorry,
first, but
I know
No,
I
this
kinda
is,
got off
this is
track.
something that she just went to some, a conference on municipal investing. And so she's got some information to share on that, but that's coming.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's a good segue into it. So
Any other questions for electric? What time is it? We're running a little bit behind. Do you,
Fire is waiting.
yeah, you want to go ahead and do fire and then we'll do lunch? That's okay? All right, thank you guys very much, and we'll be meeting soon.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the other two who didn't talk at all. I'm just kidding. Todd talked for you. Go back to my page. Oh, yeah. Oh, I have fire. 59?
99.
Oh, well, there's a little child that says fire.
they're actually
Fire protection and fire.
Yeah, well, they have two funds.
So they have fire, and they have fire protection and fire.
Hey, sorry to keep you waiting.
We got 45 minutes to fire.
So 101, 25, 41.
59, is 59, are we doing that? Is that, because there's a tab that says 59. Okay.
59, it's on.
We have a quiz for you to start. So how many authorized positions do you have in the fire department?
We have 50 FTEs.
Yes. All right. And then
Guys,
looking to see your vacancies.
What page you say?
59.
I'm sorry, 59, red. Actually, you look like you're fully staffed.
Vacancies, we just hired the last two
Yes,
this past week. They started Monday.
congratulations.
Oh.
0 vacancies.
Yes, and that's amazing.
Wow, that's
Good for you.
Four of our FTEs, they're recruit status, meaning that we're sending them to EMT school and to firefighter 1 and 2 training. You know, in the past, the minimum requirement was to have their EMT already, but we were having difficulty. The challenge is trying to get qualified personnel, so we opened it up to just 0 qualifications, so we would
Just a human
get
being.
the right people and we would train them.
Anybody. Example, if I can get someone out of a fire.
Is that part of, weren't you asking for more employees, more firefighters on your budget?
We are asking to do.
Yeah, go ahead, please, but yeah.
So with the fire departments are just the count numbers 2541. I'm not sure if everybody's there. Yeah. We are asking for 3 new firefighters and proposing $147,120 increase to our budget so that we can 15. Currently, the crew is capped at 14. And by providing one more person at making it 15 will allow us to increase our minimum staffing to 13. Right now, with the vacancies and everything else that's been going on and the built and the overtime that we've been using up, I put our minimum staffing at 10, which is really too low. It's not safe, but we have been running at 10 at times, just so that we can not, as you know, we went over our overtime budget and had to go to council to get 60,000 here recently added to that. But so having personnel, the 15 will allow us to keep adequate staff on the north side district, where we would have an EMS company and a fire company. Same thing with the fire south side, we would have EMS and fire companies, because right now it's not uncommon to have 4 rescues out, all of them out at one time. We'd have a lot of overlapping calls. Unfortunately, MedStar is not available for over 60-70% of our calls. So we're having to pick up all that call volume. And again, this morning, I mean, they were busy running this morning already, and this will allow us to have fire suppression as a backup in case we have fires or whatever the emergency may be. Having a 15, so that's really going to help us. The last time we were at 15 was probably back in 2012. We had the staffing. So since then, through budget cuts and whatever the case may be, we lost those positions. But again, hopefully we can get those back, because we're busier now than ever. Our budget, a lot of our budget that we, unfortunately, I mean, a lot of our budget that you see here goes to salaries. We're one of the second and third biggest department that is our salaries, that takes up a lot of the funding. Built-in overtime, and we'll want to go through that. Built-in overtime, our firefighters work an average of 106 hours per pay period. Anything over 106 is built-in overtime that's in their regular schedule. So that is the cost that is automatic, that built-in overtime. Anything over 106 is overtime for them, and a lot of times they have a 113, 127, 121, ways that the days fall within the pay period.
So all of your full-time, this is as 278,000 built in overtime for 42 full-time. Am I reading that right? On page 63 lines down
Yeah, for overtime is $278,000 for overtime.
for the 42 full-time. So all your 42 full-time that it's talking about are non-exempt.
Correct.
Right, that's,
Thank you.
the majority is for the 42 firefighters that we have on duty, but our fire inspectors, they're hourly as well, so they usually they have a choice of overtime or comp time. A lot of times they take comp time.
It's still time and a half, sometime, but legally they have to have a choice
Oh,
between overtime and comp time.
It's still an expense to us, though. It just banks it for them to use later in lieu of using vacation or sick leave.
so comp time is just, they're just comping a different time that they'd be working?
Yeah, so what technically happens, if you work 45 hours and you go, I'll take comp times, we're gonna give you 7.5 hours in your bank, basically in your payroll
To use.
record to use later. And so later comes and you work a 30-hour week and you say, okay, I want to use another 5 or 10 hours out of my comp time. And then we deduct it and pay it out at that point. So it's still a cost to us, but the more people that do it, sometimes it kind of levels out so that everybody's paychecks are more level and our cash flow is more level. But citywide, it's not as well embraced as we would like, but it is definitely up to the employee which way they want to go. We cannot mandate comp time.
They
So-
choose overtime, we have to.
Yeah, so it sounds like most people are generally choosing overtime because they want the extra money.
Most of our crew members, they'll choose the overtime.
Okay.
And just so you know, starting July in this current fiscal year, the state changed the para rules and they also changed retiree healthcare rules. For their built-in portion of their overtime, their regularly scheduled portion, we now pay para and retiree healthcare costs on that. And
Oh.
right now I have to manually impute that into here because our system doesn't do that yet. But it's so that part of it will always be paid because they definitely would lose out on their retirement accruals if they didn't include that in their regular checks essentially.
Do we have a thing? This might be the police department. There's a random question. Is there a thing called mandatory overtime? Is that something that happens? Because I've heard that happen with different departments.
We haven't imposed mandatory overtime on fire department. But our firefighters, we have a small amount of firefighters that have come in who are staff, who are staffing shortages fall below the minimum. They've been working really hard, but luckily I haven't had to impose mandatory overtime. That really disrupts your operation and morale and everything else, and they're already working very hard. So we've been very lucky that we haven't had to do that.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. My brother was a cop here for a long time and just remember he would always say he had to do mandatory overtime. I thought, how can you make overtime mandatory?
I
Work for
can
the
say
police
though that
department,
in the
you'll
police
understand.
department, when you're
Yeah, well, I mean-
short-staffed
I'm telling you,
and then there's ceremonial parade
Yeah.
and
right, and they're short-staffed as it is.
then they're
so-
short-staffed, that does come up.
So it
Yeah.
is mandatory, because they have court, then they have,
Yeah.
right,
I mean, yeah, I understand. I just didn't know if that was a thing in all departments. So, yeah.
every police department.
Moving along with the callback of the built-in overtime. Callback overtime, 92,000. This past year, though, we did that, I think we're over 140,000 for callback overtime for 2022, fiscal year 22, but next year, we're hoping that with these added positions, the callback overtime will be minimal, so I just want to get back overtime unless we have structure fires or large emergencies like that. We'll call back. Special event overtime, 13,000. Again, we for the rodeos. That's the biggest draw, is having coverage out there at the rodeos and the personnel out there. We also support a lot of the public events that are going on. If we can send people to make their events safer with staffing, but a lot of times, again, if we're running short or minimum, we've had to pull back. Community, but again, we're close enough a lot of times that
They are very expensive creatures for
Yeah.
community events. Police and fire are our most expensive employees because of the nature of their jobs. And so we try to balance some of that with using parks employees as well. And there's just always more demand than I think they could come up with resources.
Is it a requirement or in some policy within the city that says that we have to send fire and police to every community event? I'm just curious. I know we kind of seem to do that, and I know it sounds like it's costly, especially with being understaffed. I'm just, and maybe that's a topic for a different time. I'm just curious if that's like a must that we require through the city, or is that something where we can require events to get their own, hire their own security, or?
That's primarily up to council. There are some events where through the permitting that then we require, I think when there's alcohol, we require that they hire their own private security to man that. But a lot of it is in our best interest to be the ones manning the streets, manning the closures, manning even the solid waste pickup. It's kind of, I think everybody agrees, it's kind of in our best interest to be the ones with the boots on the ground providing that. But it's also, I think some of the public considers their tax dollars are helping to support it. And so it's something that we can provide because of that, because that's a service back to them.
And we do, as Patty said, we do require police for like alcohol events at Red Rock Park and those kinds of things, and security, and depend on. So that's already in our special events permits. But it's quite an interesting question about fire. I mean, obviously, if you have a rodeo, you want to have EMS there. And they can't be replaced by private. So that's an issue.
Yeah, they were at the balloon rally too.
Right.
You guys were out.
Support the balloon.
Awesome.
A lot of the events that the city supports, we're gonna support the event with personnel,
Right.
but private companies coming in where they're making revenue, we don't provide that EMS, and if we do, we can invoice them as well. We can charge our services, which we have in the past.
Last year you had the Navajo Nation had a PBR. Remember that bull riding?
Yes,
And you provided the service. Did you invoice them for that?
we did.
No, okay. Yeah.
Provided them. It was something we were glad to help, but it was a short notice. For us.
I know, well,
Yeah, phone call.
They asked everybody in the country, but they couldn't get anybody.
We were able to get staffing out there and invoice. That's what-
And you provide some services for Fire Rock that we regularly bill, right? Are you still
Yes.
doing that?
Right, for Fire Rock Casino with our agreement, we have 3 personnel that Fire Rock can pays us an annual. Not sure exactly.
It's
how
about
much.
$8,000 a month.
So, and then also we charge them on calls, or we have an EMS call there or a fire call. If we respond out there, we track those, and we also get paid for those.
So there is some ability to recoup some of it, but again, we're a public entity, so part of it's our service. But the events, that's why we do the full permitting process, because there's a lot involved behind the scenes on all that. You need streets, you need parks, you need police, you need fire. And I'm sure I'm missing a lot of others. Ben, most of his position is running liaison on a lot of that stuff. So those are things behind the scene the public may not realize that we provide in all of what we do. And so when we're running through these and we're like, we need the money, we need to do these things. You guys want this done or that done. You know, it's just our communication back sometimes doesn't clearly identify why we're saying we need this or that. And so hopefully these help enlighten you and remind you some of what the demands are from the public.
Moving on down, our operational budget is right around $58,000. And we use that funding for, if we break that down into professional services, we pay for our medical director. Dr. Alex Jensen from GIMC, an annual fee of $10,000 a year. He's our medical director. He's MedStar's medical director, and also Metro Dispatch as well. We also have a pharmacy director that oversees our inventory, our narcotics that we have on the EMS side, and budget 2,000 for her. For our firefighters, EMTs, for their pre-employment physicals or shots and vaccines that they needed. We budgeted 1,500 for that. Under other contractual services or quick claims, we budgeted 13,000. Now, that number, I'm sure is going to increase with the amount that we are starting to see, we're starting to receive. Since August of last year, we have been billing for our EMS transports. Before that, we didn't bill dying, we didn't bill anybody. We just did it and we absorbed a lot of that cost for EMS. But with Quick Claims, it's a company that does all of our billing for us. They send out all the invoices, they track all the transports that we do, and we pay them roughly 11% of what revenue is collected. And this last month in March, we collected somewhere a little over $19,000. So our invoice was $2,000, roughly around $2,000. So seeing our revenues increase as we're going, because each month, their increase. Last month was 18,000, this month 19,000. So that number may change down the road, where we may have to move some money to incorporate that revenue that we're getting for our transports. And it's hard to put an exact figure on that because there's so many claims out there that haven't been paid. So sometimes we may be getting paid for claims that were done in January or December that are now falling into March's revenue. So it's hard to tell exactly how much we're going to be paying for that. But I think once the year, we have a full year go by, we'll be able to maybe have a better average of what that's going to cost us. But right now, we had it set and it's at 13,000. And we'll move it on down. Our contact wireless, which is our other services, is $350. That's a text alert service that we have at the fire department. So in the event we need to notify our personnel of a general alarm, or we need them back, or whatever the case may be, we can send out text alerts, mass text alerts to our fire personnel. That's what on down to supplies. We have 21,632 budgeted. The majority of that goes to EMS supplies. We try to keep a lot of our EMS program on the general 101 account. So a lot of everything that we spend on the general is for or supports in some way the EMS program. Roughly, we have 18,000 for EMS supplies. Fire prevention supplies, $1,000 budgeted. Office supplies, $1,632.
Has your supplies in terms of, because a lot of people have been saying that it's been hard to get supplies and things like that, in terms of your EMS supplies, and has that increased, would you say, in the last 2 years? Has it stayed around the same?
The amount of supplies?
Yeah, it says, yeah, most of that, the 18,000 is coming from EMS supplies of the 21,000. So I'm just wondering if that number, that dollar amount has been around the same, or has that increased since COVID?
The price of supplies has increased.
Okay.
And, I'm not sure what percentage that has increased, but I know supplies are getting harder and harder to get. We have, many of our supplies are still on back order. It's getting harder to stay up with our EMS supplies.
I don't know that we want to do a line item here. And is there anything that's out of unusual in terms of last year's? Yeah.
No, not a lot of the 101. Everything is much flat, like the same last year. So nothing unusual out of the 101.
And do you want to go ahead and go to the 209?
Okay.
101.
Oh, perfect. not to rush you, but lunch has been ready for a while. so- And we're inviting you to join us. So
I'm gonna make it
if you're hungry, hurry up.
Yeah, so
You heard
move
me.
along, fella.
Moving along. 209, that is the bulk of our budget. That's the money that we received from the state fire fund. We received roughly $590,148 a year from the state fire fund. That's based off our ISO classification of the ISO. That's a really good classification. Hopefully we can get down to that, down to a 1, or we would even get more funding. And the way that gets broken down is we have 4 main stations. For each main station, we get 107,000. So for our North District, South, East, West, each main station is 107,000 that they allocate to the fire award to the fire department.
107? 107 or 170?
107,000. And then for each substation, they award us 80,000. We have 2 substations. With all that together, that makes up the 590,000 that California department that we awarded for. And again, this funding is all for fire protection, anything fire hose, fire equipment, fire training, everything that basically are on our operations that we can run. The fire side is taken out of this. Also out of that pie is we also try to put away some of our CIP, our capital purchases. As you know, we're saving funding for an aerial fire truck. We have a 1995 aerial ladder truck that we're trying to replace. Again, that's going to run around 1.2 million. We're saving every year roughly $150,000 to $200,000 a year from that fire fund. So of that, we budget that funding for training, travel, maintenance of our building, equipment, other contractual services. We budget for that. That's all of our software that we use for inventory, record keeping of our trucks, equipment, our incident reports, or the EMS side, fire side, safety, uniform, and everything really just comes out of that 209 fire fund. For each line item, we budgeted same as last year. If there's any questions on any amounts in the account line item that you have to correct.
That all comes from the state.
What's that?
That money comes from the state.
That comes from the state. That's paid by insurance premiums from the state that gets paid to the state for our ISO classification. Again, we're 3, and a lot of work goes behind that to maintain that. Training, water supplies, or we get graded by the ISO, and that's a really good classification under the 3. But if we can get to a 201, we would see our increase, our number we get to state, but I'll get it.
Julie, will the additional staff help our ISO number?
No, that's one area that has always hurt us is our staffing.
Mhm.
Having 15 on duty or that can respond to initial fire is going to help us because again, that has hurt us in the past. NFPA 1710 is what ISO bases your staffing on. For a low frequency fire, which would be a low hazard, like a house fire, residential fire, the minimum is 16 for that fire for initial response. With the 15, and then with our support from our admin staffing inspectors, we're able to meet that minimum
You
staffing.
can get there.
Anything larger than that, we would have to call in general alarm or again change our tactics to fight that fire with the minimum amount of personnel that we have.
And they grade you on a level of 1 to
1 to 10.
1 to 10 in year 3. Oh, so you're pretty
Yeah,
low.
3 is a pretty good number for a small city. 2 would be unbelievable.
Next year.
Any other questions or any other? I assume that there's agreement on the 3 positions, so that was the kind of the direction that we needed to get today. So if there's no other questions, we do have lunch. Mayor, you want to go ahead and just recess to get lunch for maybe 15 minutes, and we all are invited to join us.
Thank you.
Tasha, tell us what to do. Ready? Okay. Just go.
Just go.
I think we invited the police and the